The alarm went off at 5 in the morning. Always at 5. Rafael Montero woke up in the same 3,000-square-foot bedroom where he'd been sleeping alone for 3 years. The penthouse in Itayimbibi was everything he'd dreamed of having. Floor-to-ceiling windows, panoramic view of São Paulo, furniture from Italian designers whose names he could barely pronounce. But in reality, it was just an expensive place to not sleep well. He got out of the king-size bed and walked to the window. Down below, the city was beginning to wake up. Small points of light moved through the avenues. Cars, people, lives happening. Raphael pressed his palm against the cold glass. From the 32nd floor, everything seemed distant. Unreal. He liked this feeling of being above, of having won. But there was something in that morning silence that deeply bothered him. Espresso from the $20,000 Italian machine. Navy blue Armani suit chosen the night before. Rolex Submariner watch on his left wrist. The routine was as precise as surgery. Every movement calculated, every second optimized. There was no space to think. That was the idea. Thinking brought memories. Memories brought regrets. Raphael looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Perfectly styled hair, clean-shaven, tired eyes hidden by contact lenses. Who was that man? He didn't know anymore. He only knew that this man was successful. And success, they said, was all that mattered. The private elevator descended silently. Mirrored walls multiplied Raphael infinitely. Infinite versions of himself, all equally empty. 35 years old, CEO of Tech Vision, an artificial intelligence startup valued at $200 million, 5 innovation awards, cover of Forbes, Fortune, and Businessweek, speaker at 3 international conferences, and no real reason to smile. The underground garage was like a modern cave. Cold lights, polished concrete, cars that cost more than houses. His black Tesla waited in the reserved spot. Raphael got in, and the car came to life on its own. Screens lit up. The digital dashboard greeted him by name. Even the cars were polite to him now. The commute to the office on Fifth Avenue took 23 minutes. Raphael used every second. Emails, stock quotes, financial market news, messages on Slack. His phone was an extension of his hand. Or maybe his hand was an extension of his phone. He wasn't sure anymore. For a moment, while waiting for the light to turn green on the avenue, Raphael looked out the window. A man was selling water at the traffic light. Sweaty, tired, but smiling at the drivers. Raphael observed that smile. When was the last time he smiled like that? Not posing for a photo, not out of courtesy in a meeting. Smiled for real. The light turned green. The Tesla accelerated. The question was left behind. Tech Vision's office occupied 3 floors of a Class A commercial building. Futuristic lobby, reception with vertical plant wall, Scandinavian design chairs. Employees greeted Raphael as if he were royalty. "Good morning, Raphael." "Great weekend, Raphael." He waved vaguely, without really seeing their faces. They were just pieces on the board. Useful pieces, but replaceable. Marcos waited for him in the 15th floor hallway, his partner and supposedly best friend since college. They built the company together, sleeping on couches, eating ramen, dreaming big. Now they both wore $3,000 suits and barely looked each other in the eye. Success had that effect. It brought bank accounts closer and pushed people apart. "Meeting in 10 minutes," Marcos said, checking his Swiss watch. The California investors confirmed attendance by video. Could be the Series C round. Raphael showed no emotion. "How much?" he asked. "50 million. Maybe 70 if you impress them." Raphael adjusted his tie. "I'll impress them," he replied. It wasn't arrogance. It was just a fact. He always impressed. That's what he existed for. The conference room had a table that cost $80,000. Raphael never understood why a table needed to cost that much, but the designer insisted it conveyed seriousness and innovation. Giant screens on the walls showed real-time graphs. The investors appeared punctually. Middle-aged white men, some with headsets, all with the same expression of those calculating return on investment while pretending to listen. Raphael presented masterfully. He knew the numbers by heart. Growth rate, customer acquisition cost, monthly recurring revenue, projected profit margin. Words that meant money. Just money. He spoke their language fluently because it was the only language he still spoke. Graphs rose on the screen. Explosive projections. Addressable market in the billions. Disruption. Scalability. Unicorn. The investors smiled. Those shark smiles that Raphael recognized because he saw the same one in the mirror. You're a visionary, Raphael, said the fund leader, a man named Richard with artificially white teeth. 70 million. We'll send the contract tomorrow. Virtual handshakes. Congratulations. The call ended. The room fell silent. Marcos celebrated discreetly. We did it, man. We really did it. He patted Raphael on the shoulder. We should celebrate. Dinner tonight? Raphael agreed without enthusiasm. Sure, dinner. But he already knew how it would be. Expensive restaurant, French wine, conversation about business. The same empty celebration he'd lived through 12 times. When everyone left, Raphael stayed alone in the conference room. He sat on the edge of the expensive table and looked at the now dark screens. $70 million. His share would be enough to never have to work again. He could retire at 35. Travel the world. Do whatever he wanted. The problem was, he didn't know what he wanted. It had been so long since he'd chased anything but numbers that he forgot what came after the numbers. Night arrived as it always did, without warning, without ceremony. Raphael declined dinner with Marcos, invented an excuse about papers to review. The truth was, he couldn't stand those fake celebrations anymore. He drove aimlessly through the city, something he hadn't done in years. His GPS offered optimized routes, but he ignored them. Turned left on impulse, then right. Let himself get lost. He ended up in a neighborhood he hadn't visited in a long time. Villa Maddalena. The narrow streets, the small bars, the people on the sidewalks talking. There was life there. Real, messy, noisy. Raphael parked and walked. He passed by a cafe he didn't immediately recognize. Then the memory hit him like a punch. He knew that place. That's where he used to come with Clara. Every Saturday morning, 7 years ago. When he was still studying engineering and she was doing fine arts. When their dreams fit into cafe conversations and he thought $1,000 a month would be enough wealth. When laughing was easy and the future seemed full of possibilities, not obligations. Raphael pushed the door. The place was exactly the same. The same scratched wooden tables, the same mismatched chairs, the same smell of fresh coffee and toast. And there, at a corner table, was Clara. She hadn't aged, just matured. Shorter hair, some lines around her eyes, but the same smile. She was grading papers, red pen in hand. She'd always been a teacher at heart. She looked up and saw him. For a second, they both froze. 7 years evaporated. Then Clara smiled. Not a bitter or surprised smile. Just a smile. Raphael? He waved awkwardly, suddenly conscious of his $3,000 suit in a cafe where beer cost $3. Can I sit? He asked. Clara pointed to the empty chair. They talked. First about nothing. The cafe, the neighborhood, how different it was. Then about everything. Clara still taught at public school, still painted on weekends, still lived in a rented apartment, earned little. But when she talked about her students, her eyes sparkled in a way Raphael hadn't seen in anyone in years. In a way he himself never had. "And you?" she asked. Raphael started the automatic speech. The company, the growth, the awards, the investments. Clara listened politely, then asked, "But are you happy?" The question completely disarmed him. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I'm successful," he finally said. She touched his hand gently. "That's not what I asked." Raphael looked at that hand, small, with paint stains on the edges of her nails. The hand of someone who created things. He looked at his own hands, clean, manicured, empty. When was the last time he created something real? TechVision developed algorithms, lines of code that generated profit. But created what? Beauty? Meaning? Or just more ways to sell things nobody needed? They talked for 2 hours. Raphael lost track of time, something that hadn't happened since he bought his first smartwatch. Clara told him about her simple life. Cheap trips, dinners with friends, weekends reading in the park. A life he would have despised a few years ago. A life that now seemed infinitely richer than his. She didn't ask about money, wasn't impressed by his success, and therein lay the relief.
Raphael returned to the penthouse at 11 at night. The apartment welcomed him with automatic lights and perfect temperature, 73 degrees, always 73 degrees. He took off his expensive suit and let it fall to the floor, something he never did. He stood on the balcony, barefoot, looking at the illuminated city, a sea of lights, millions of people with their dreams and fears, and he was above it all, alone in his glass tower. He thought about Clara, the way she smiled when talking about a student who finally understood perspective and drawing, the excitement telling him about a collective exhibition in a forgotten cultural space, the paint-stained hands that created things she'd never sell because art wasn't made for money. She had so little and seemed to have everything. Raphael grabbed his phone. 743 unread emails, 200 Slack notifications, 27 WhatsApp messages, all about work, none asking how he was, none from anyone who cared. He had thousands of contacts, hundreds of LinkedIn connections, and no real friends. The last one he had, Marcos, was now just a partner who shared profits but not confidences. He opened the banking app. His balance blinked on the screen. $8,450,000. And when the $70 million came in, it would be even more. He could buy anything. A new car every week, a beach house, trips around the world in first class. But for what? To impress whom? People he didn't know? People who only sought him for their own interest? That night, Raphael couldn't sleep. He lay awake in the 3,000-square-foot bed, staring at the ceiling. He did the math. In the last 3 years, he worked an average of 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, 1,095 days, 15,300 hours dedicated to turning lines of code into money. 15,000 hours he could have spent learning guitar, or backpacking, or simply sitting in a cafe talking with someone he loved. When he finally fell asleep, he dreamed of a small apartment, a cramped place with a leaky ceiling where he and Clara lived. In the dream, they were poor, but laughed while cooking pasta. There were plants in the window and poorly painted pictures on the walls. There was life. He woke up at 3 a.m. with his heart tight. The apartment around him was dark and silent like a luxury tomb. Raphael got up and went back to the balcony. The city never completely slept. There were always lights, movement, life happening down there. He thought about all the articles he'd read about success, the billionaire biographies, the productivity podcasts, the books about winning mindset. all promised that temporary sacrifice led to permanent happiness. Work hard now, rest later. Focus on the goal. Eliminate distractions. People are distractions. Love is a distraction. Life is a distraction. And he believed it. Sacrificed everything. Broke up with Clara because she interfered with his focus. Lost contact with family because they didn't understand his ambition. Abandoned hobbies because they didn't generate return on investment. Transformed himself into an efficient money-making machine. And the machine worked perfectly. It only had one problem. Machines don't feel, don't love, don't live. They just process and produce. Raphael looked at his hands. These hands signed million-dollar contracts, shook hands with powerful investors, typed codes that changed markets. But it had been years since they touched another human being with affection. Didn't hug, didn't caress, didn't hold another hand simply for the joy of holding it. His hands were tools. He was a tool, a very expensive and increasingly empty tool. The sun began to rise over Sao Paulo. The city gained colors. Raphael realized he was crying. He didn't know how long the tears had been flowing. He hadn't cried since the day TechVision received its first funding. That day, Marcos opened champagne, and he felt that crying would be weakness, that emotions were enemies of success, that businessmen didn't cry, they just won. But there, on that penthouse balcony that cost $7 million, he cried for the life he didn't live, for the people he pushed away, for the man he could have been. He got richer every day, that was true. His bank account grew, his companies multiplied, his wealth increased. But every night when the lights went out and silence came, he felt the emptiness grow too. An emptiness that no million could fill, an emptiness that perhaps could never be filled again. And for the first time in years, Rafael Montero wondered if he had won or lost the game he chose to play.